about an hour ago. I just got into bed. I was just about to read, and I heard this. It's a sickening sound.
It's just a thud. I thought someone had hit us because we were quite happily tied up to a mooring ball.
And then it went again.
And then it just went again.
And it was like,
again. And by the time I realised what was going on, it must have hit 4 or 5 times.
I haven't really looked forward to making this video because it means revisiting the events that happened the other Friday evening, and I've already written the blog about it, so it's a memory that I don't particularly want to rehash very often, but we wanted to share our memory of the events when we dashed against the rocks.
Ourselves and ABC were in Ibiza when we got a message from my brother Phil saying that he was in Javea in mainland Spain. So we looked for a window of wind, and we took that on Thursday. So Thursday morning we set off fairly early, and then 10 hours later, around about 6:30 at night, we arrived in Javea Bay. At the northern end of Javea Bay is the marina, and just outside the marina wall there are 4 free mooring balls. Also down at the southern part of the bay there are lots and lots of free mooring balls. Now, we'd previously had a pretty bad experience on the mooring ball outside the harbour wall where we'd stayed before we went to Ibiza, and it was fairly rolly and we didn't get any sleep for 2 nights. So we decided to take one of the mooring balls down at the southern end. Again, that Thursday night was not the best night's sleep, mainly due to the wind constantly changing direction and the boat swinging around on the mooring and then being put side to the incoming swell. On the Friday morning when we woke up, we could see that the swell had increased and the wind had also increased, and it was coming in from a northeasterly direction, which meant that we were in a very unprotected spot.
And because the sea was fairly rough at the southern end of the bay, which was where we'd spent the previous evening on a mooring ball, we decided to move up to the northern part of Javea's Bay, just behind the marina wall. There were a few old white mooring balls that have been there as long as we can remember seeing them. About 3 months ago, just before summer started, they introduced a few more new mooring balls, yellow with like an extra orange bit that you attach to. And when we motored up there and decided to choose one, because the ropes on the original white mooring balls were really tatty and we weren't too sure if they'd hold, especially in sort of bouncy seas, and we didn't know how rough the weather was going to get, we chose one of the new ones, as you would.
So we tied off to the new orange mooring ball, and as we always do, we put 2 lines to the mooring ball from both of our forward cleats. We then lowered our dinghy and went ashore to go to lunch with Phil and his family. And the restaurant we were eating at actually had a view over the harbour wall, and you could just see ABC's mast over the wall just doing this as the rolling swell came in. Jokingly, I said to everyone, "Oh, as long as we can see her mast doing this, then she hasn't broken free from her mooring and she's not on the rocks." Everyone laughed at the time, and little did we know how true those words would become. So after a great afternoon out with my brother Phil, we dinghied back to ABC, got there about 8:30 at night. We sat in the cockpit, had a beer and watched the sunset. Before we went below, I did one last look around to confirm that we were the only vessel staying in the mooring field that night, and I also noted that the wind was calming down and the waves were certainly lessening.
We were quite tired. I went to bed fairly early for me, about 10 o'clock. I read a book, fell asleep, I think. I was certainly dozing at that point. I think I turned the light off.
I wasn't quite ready for sleep, so I decided to watch an episode of Sons of Anarchy on my computer with headphones on at the saloon table.
And the next thing I knew, I was just jolted by this horrendous sound, like horrendous crashing, grinding sound, and the boat lurched.
At 10:30 p.m. was when the proverbial hit the fan. It was the most horrendous sound I've ever heard. It was like a solid boom, and then a crunch and a grind. And at first I thought somebody had hit us. It sounded like somebody had hit into us. I quickly removed the headphones and got out from behind the saloon table and started heading towards the companionway steps, just as Ansha emerged out of the princess suite asking what the heck was going on.
Now, I'd gone to bed with no clothes on because it's summer, it's hot, and I basically sleep with just a sheet and that's it. And so I struggled to get a pair of shorts on, and rushed out to see what was going on. And then it happened again, like there was another bang and another lurch, and I felt sick, and it was like, oh my God, something really, really bad is happening here. And I'm thinking possibly, we've got loose of the mooring ball. There was no way I couldn't understand how, but it was the only thing I could think of. We're hitting something. This would be what it would sound like if you're hitting rocks. I'm thinking, that if the boat gets a hole in the hull, and the hull is only about that thick, they're not that thick on these things, we could sink. I'm sort of stumbling out of my bedroom, and Barry's like already making his way up the companionway steps, and it happened again, and the boat lurched, and it was like, holy shit.
At the base of the companionway steps, I grabbed hold of the fly screen, pulled it down and just cast it to one side and dashed up the steps. Upon reaching the cockpit, it was like being thrown into an alternate reality, a nightmare reality. Boom, crunch, grind was all that was happening, and as I looked around, I could see that we were on the rocks.
So he's going up to see what happened, and he just shouted. He said, "We're on the marina wall. We're on rocks." And I mean, that's worst case scenario. You can't just get out and push it off. You can't push a 9.5 ton boat off a wall. You can't. You just get squashed. How's it going to happen? So my first thing, apart from blind panic, which is, if I get overwhelmed, my mind goes blank. So I have to really work hard to stay focused.
Every 10 seconds or so there was this boom, crunch, grind. And after taking a quick glance around, I said to Ansha, who was halfway up the companionway steps, "Oh shit, we're on the rocks. I need all the light we've got, and I need the engine keys now."
Barry was shouting at me that he needed lights and he needed the VHF radio and things. I'm going, shit, which is the VHF radio? In my sort of panicked, blurry kind of vision state. And I'm sort of scrambling through trying to find the right one, and then I'm holding it. I'm going, because I didn't have my glasses on, I don't think, so I couldn't. No, I didn't. So I couldn't see the buttons, and I didn't know where the on switch was. And while I'm doing this, I'm screaming at the universe, because I have to say it's sort of my first call for get the big guys involved, and I'm going, "You've got to help us. This is not where this ends. Save the boat. Please get us off the rocks and no holes in the hull." And I was sort of saying that over and over like a mantra as all of this was happening. Oh, and because Barry needed the keys to turn the engine on. So he said, "Get me the keys." So I got the keys, and meanwhile, every now and then the boat is kind of lurching with that sickening sound.
As she tried to hand them up to me, there was another boom, crunch, grind, and the boat just lurched wildly to one side. It was just weird. And she lost hold of the keys. They fell to her feet. She reached down to grab them as there was another boom, crunch, grind. Then she got the keys, got them to me, And then I took the 10 long steps from the companionway to the helm, and in the pitch darkness, I'm trying to get the ignition key in the ignition to get the engine started. It must have been between Anja grabbing the keys and me actually getting the engine started, must have been about 40 seconds. And in that 40-second space of time, there were 4 more boom, crunch, grinds. It's just a sickening sound.
The boat's lurching and I'm scrambling around on the floor, and you know, you watch movies where the hero or the heroine is trying to reach something and you're going, oh, for God's sake, just get it. And she's like, ugh, and I'm sort of going, come on, to myself to get it happening. So I passed them up to him, and you know, he got the boat started, and so I came up with the radio. I can't remember exactly. Obviously I got the keys first, and then he's saying, I need the radio, I need lights on, because he couldn't see what he was doing.
I eventually got the engine started, and because we were side on to the big concrete blocks that make up the exterior wall of Javea's marina stroke harbour, I put it in reverse to around about 2,500 revs, but it just didn't seem to be responding. And at the time, I remember saying to the universe, please don't let the rudder or propeller be damaged in any way. At 2,500 revs, she didn't seem to be moving at all, so I put it up to just over 3,000 revs, which is pretty much all she's got, and very, very slowly she started inching back from the rocks. That was the best feeling ever. I can honestly say that this whole experience was the most scared I have ever been in my entire life. Nothing has scared me as much as this.
Ironically, we're right outside the marina wall, you know, and I was thinking, we could drown, we could lose the boat literally within meters of safety. Lots of ideas go through your head, you know, lots of thoughts, and trying to organise your thoughts, and for me trying to sort of stay focused and assist Baz, because like he was the one that was really the one that could make this happen, you know, like only one of us can drive the boat. He was driving the boat, thank God. he's trying to get the keys in the ignition at this point. So I'm going up there with the radio and handing that to him. While I'm up there, I can see, you know, on the port side, we're just literally the marina wall and the rocks. It's just there, and I'm looking up, and there's a group of about 5 people looking down at us, watching, and I'm thinking, surely they must know that we're in trouble. So I'm shouting at them, waving my arms in the air, going, help, help, get help. And then I'm sort of trying to translate it into Spanish, going, ayudame, help me. And they were just looking at us. And I realised they're not going to do anything. Either they don't know, or they don't care, or maybe they're just taking selfies. Oh, look, there's a boat crashing behind us. I don't know. So, and at that point I also realised I didn't have a top on. I had my pink shorts on, but I didn't have any top on. I thought, oh my God, they probably think I'm just some crazed female waving that with the boobs flying in the wind, wild eyes and, you know, scruffy hair.
There was one final boom, crunch, grind as she backed off the rocks and gained some deeper water. And of course, as I'm pulling her back off the rocks, my mind is also thinking, oh shit, if she's holed, would she be best left on the rocks for salvage purposes? And then the other part of my mind was said, well, no, if she is holed, we're 2 minutes from the marina entrance. We can actually motor into the marina and tie her up in shallow water, and we'll do that if she is holed.
Baz had got the engine, and I was, at that point, I went forward, and I was wanting to see what had happened to the mooring ball and our connection to the mooring ball. Had the mooring ball dragged on its, you know, on its own concrete block or whatever was securing it to the seabed? what had happened. So I got to the front cleats, and meanwhile Barry, I can hear Barry, and he's got the boat in reverse, and he's just doing what he has to do to get this thing off. And I'm looking, and the cleats, one on either side of the bow, and both lines were firmly attached, running through the fair leads down the other side. I'm thinking, what the hell? What's happened? The lines are fine. And so I pulled on one, and it was the port side one first, and the orange ringed part of the new mooring ball that we were attached to came up with our line, like it was firmly attached to our line as we had attached it.
And I said to Angie, I said, so what the hell happened to our mooring lines? How did both of our mooring lines fail? She said they didn't. Our mooring lines are still attached to our cleats. Problem is, the mooring ball is attached to the end of our lines. So the actual mooring ball itself, which was only 3 months old, had failed. Had completely just separated from its chain that holds it to the concrete block. It's now 8 o'clock. It's just after 8, probably 8:30 Saturday morning. I've done a visual inspection of the hull from the dinghy, and there's no signs of any contact at all. So we're assuming that the horrendous noise that we heard when it happened must have been the bottom of the keel banging onto the rocks of the breakwater there. So now I'm just getting my snorkeling gear on, and I'm just going to snorkel and have a look underneath and see if there's anything obvious, and if need be I can put scuba gear on for a longer, closer inspection. But once we found out that everything is okay and where it should be down there, we're heading out of here, and we're going to go somewhere where we can actually drop anchor and put faith into our mantis anchor.
Because this is the mooring ball.
So this is the bit that our lines were attached to. I know it looks pretty straggly, but it kind of works. So that we had our two mooring lines attached to that, and off to a port cleat and a starboard cleat. And then this bit here goes underwater. And this is where it failed. It detached from its own line.
Which was?
That one over there.
Baz coined it well this morning when I said, how are you feeling? And he said, sick to my stomach. But like we were just saying this morning, it could have happened while we were out for the day in Javea.
Away from the boat. Yeah.
And if that had happened, it just would have kept on crashing, you know. Yeah. So it could have happened in bigger seas, and that would have. So we're so again. We're very, very fortunate. It's a learning curve. Like, don't trust mooring balls. But anyway, let's have a look, see if we can see any damage, and
let's get out of here.
Now, either it was really shitty line, and I can't imagine that they would use poor line. The only thing that we've thought of afterwards is perhaps a boat had gone over it at some point with a prop and had really seriously weakened it. Don't know, but it was just all frayed. Anyway, he got the boat off the rocks. He got the boat off the rocks. And there were no holes in it. Like, I know that now. There were no holes in the hull, but we didn't know. Like, we were listening for the bilge pump to come on. The bilge pump for non-boaties is the thing that comes on when you get water in the bilges in the bottom of the boat. And we knew that if there was a break in the hull anywhere, the water would come in and it would make its way to the bilge pump would turn on. And then we're going, oh my God, did the bilge pump work? Is the bilge pump, I mean, the bilge pump is always switched on, but it's like, has it failed? You know, always. I wanted to go straight to the marina.
Anshia wanted to go straight into the marina, but I just wanted to fully ascertain the situation and exactly what was or wasn't happening with the hull, or whether we were holed or whether we were taking on water and stuff like that. So I said, no, we're going to grab one of these white mooring balls, one of the older mooring balls. And unfortunately, the first one we chose happened to be the most poorly maintained mooring ball in the world. The bit where you attach your mooring lines is just thin. But I said, okay, look, this will do for now, while we find out, whether we're taking on water. So we managed to get a couple of lines around that mooring, and that allowed us to leave the engine running in neutral and go below to, first of all, have a listen to see if the bilge pump was running. But because the engine was running, I couldn't quite tell whether the bilge pump was on or not. So the inspection panel for our bilge pump is actually below the central seat at the saloon table. So we had to remove the cushions, open the lid, and then take out all the things that are stored in that storage to get access to the inspection panel. And I'm pretty sure that I didn't breathe at all while we were taking apart this storage area, not knowing what to expect or what my next move was if there was water pouring into the bilges. I just grabbed hold of the bilge inspection panel and opened it and looked inside, and there was nothing at all. I mean, everything that was meant to be there was there, but there was no water rushing in, just the usual, I don't know, a couple of centimeters of dirty black bilge water that lives underneath a float switch. So that was a huge relief. Obviously, we were still watertight, we weren't holed. So basically, we were in a safe position for now.
And we had a look, we've got a torch, and we're looking down, and there was absolutely no water in the bilge at all, no extra water in the bilge. And we were just so relieved. We could, we've sold everything and we've put it all in this, and okay, I pushed for that. Rather than split between a small pokey little house as a backup and a small pokey little boat, I went, no, let's just put it all on black. We could have lost everything that night. We seriously could have lost everything.
So slightly further out, there is another white mooring ball, and we happen to know that one had a very sturdy mooring loop on top of it. So I said to Angie, okay, we're going to slip the lines from this mooring and we're going to pick up that mooring just slightly ahead of us. We got this mooring first time with the boat hook, but unfortunately, in our haste, the boat hook and our mooring line got attached to the mooring ball, and we almost lost the boat hook over the side, and we weren't going to lose that because it was a brand new one. So we spent a good 15 minutes trying to untangle that.
The first one, the line was just really, from the mooring ball, it was just really, really bad. So we decided to move on to another one. But we got the boat hook stuck in because it was all twisted. The line and everything was all twisted. So that was, and it was the new boat hook.
Then again, we put, as we always do, 2 mooring lines to the mooring ball onto both of our cleats. And then we just knelt down on the foredeck and hugged with relief. It was relief that we hadn't lost our home and all of our belongings and possessions. Everything we have is on this boat. And she said, okay, so what do we do now? And I said, well, it's highly unlikely that 2 mooring balls are going to fail, but the prudent thing to do would be to set an anchor alarm, which we hadn't set, and I'll talk more about that in a second, and also for us to keep a watch until daylight. Now, Anne, she said she couldn't sleep, so she was going to take the first watch. I said, okay, fine, I need to sleep, so wake me in 2 hours.
The night that it happened, after we put the anchor alarm on, we decided that we would keep watch as well. So I was wide awake, there was no way I was going to get back to sleep. So I said to Baz, I said, look, you go to bed first, get some sleep, and I will come and wake you when I'm tired, and then you can take over. So I got my book and I just stayed up on deck and read with a big torch.
So Anshia took the first watch. I told her 2 hours, but she let me sleep for 4 hours because she couldn't sleep, and she knows that I can function on about 4 hours sleep. So from the time of this event beginning at 10:30 to when we sort of like finally got into a safe position, it was midnight. So only 90 minutes had passed for this whole ordeal. It felt like a lot longer than that. So from 4 o'clock until 8 o'clock, I sat in the cockpit, just making sure that we were still attached to our current mooring ball, and just going backwards and forwards in my head, what we'd done prior to getting attached to the mooring ball, what we'd done attached to the mooring ball, and what we'd done after the proverbial had hit the fan. At 8 o'clock I woke Anshia up and said, I need you to walk the dinghy around the outside of the hull so I can inspect it. Above water level I couldn't find any signs of any contact with the rocks and the hull, which was fantastic. So I put on my snorkeling gear and then had an inspection around the hull at the waterline, below the waterline level, and again no scratches at all. But what I did notice that down on the bulb of the keel along the port side, it was all scratched. So there's no anti-fouling paint on there now, but that's all been scratched away down to the bare iron of the keel. So I wanted to take a closer look at that, and I put my scuba gear on and descended down to have a look at the keel. Underneath the keel, it is just scratched to craziness. So it looked like the keel had taken all of the impact. I also inspected the prop and the rudder, and no signs of contact for those either.
We came away with scratches on the bottom and the side of the keel. That's it. Barry checked that the next day when we had daylight.
And we put into place several new procedures. The first of which is that whether we're on a mooring ball or on anchor, we will always snorkel to see that the anchor is set, or check the integrity of the mooring ball below the surface. And again, whether we're at anchor or on a mooring ball, we will always set an anchor alarm. During dark hours, there is always now a waterproof torch hanging off the throttle handle at the helm station, which will allow us to find the keyhole quicker. Any incident at all during dark hours, the first person to the electronics panel will switch on all exterior lights that we've got. And if we have a choice between a mooring ball and dropping anchor, we will always drop our big Mantis anchor, because in Mantis we trust.
We've learned, whether you're on a mooring ball, which is going to be a very rare thing from now on, or if you're anchored, put on an anchor alarm app. We've got one. We naively trusted the mooring ball, and look what happened. So but every night since then we've had the app, and we've anchored since then.
The following day was quite interesting as well, as we began to notice our cuts and bruises from the 90-minute event. It's quite fascinating how the brain will just ignore superfluous information when you're in the middle of handling a crisis. But I am pleased to say that our bruises are fading, our cuts are healing, and our psyche is back to what it was prior to the event. We were very shook up for a good 2 or 3 days there, as the reality kicked in. And I think Anshia actually said at some point, even though she's not qualified to diagnose, I think we're possibly suffering from a mild form of PTSD. And I would concur with that.
As soon as we could, we left to Calpe, which is a lovely bay, and it was protected, and it was at the foot of a beautiful mountain that reminded me of the Glasshouse Mountains, which was where our home used to be in Australia. And we had a week there to recover. We needed that week. I mean, I'm not qualified to say or diagnose, but I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't have PTSD. I know that we had on and off moments of crying, of just feeling sick to the stomach, anxious as.
And now, 2 weeks after the event, here we are back at Marina de las Salinas, where we are getting a few little things fixed before we head off to Greece. But I'm getting ahead of myself here, so all I'm going to do now is say thank you very much for watching, and if you do have any comments or questions, please leave them down below. We will reply to you. And if you haven't yet subscribed, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ding the bell icon so you get notified when future videos come out from Sailing ABC.
About an hour ago, I just got into bed. I was just about to read, and I heard this. It's a sickening sound.
It's just a thud. I thought someone had hit us because we were quite happily tied up to a mooring ball.
And then it went again.
And then it just went again.
And it was like,
and by the time I realised what was going on, it must have hit 4 or 5 times. Dashed upstairs.
We're running up.
We're right on the rocks.
Clothes on. We were on the rocks So when I went up the front, Barry's turned the engine on, and I'm running down trying to find the VHF to do
a mayday.
A mayday. There's people on the wall, and I'm shouting, "Aiutarmi!" You know, like, help me! Like, if they couldn't see it, they could hear it.
Yeah. So I managed to just gunner in reverse. So hopefully there's no damage to the prop or rudder.
There's no water in the bilge. The bilge pump hasn't come on.
Hasn't made a peep, so it's all good.
So we checked the lines, and the lines were still attached to one part of the buoy. There's like the mooring ball. The line holding the mooring ball just disintegrated. So then I'm like, let's get into the marina, and Baz said, no, let's just, there's no water coming in.
I'll ascertain the situation. Let's get the boat actually situated against something, and then let's see if we've got water coming in. If we've got water coming in, we've still got time to get to the marina. We're literally on the outside wall of the marina here.
Because we can't go in there because it's just for...
That's just the dinghy. We didn't give her enough slack.
So we attached to the first mooring ball that we could find, and once we got the lines disengaged from the first one, and then but it was one of the new ones, which the other one had failed. It was a new one, so it wasn't. It was a white one. It was
a old white one.
It was an old white one, and the line was
frayed.
Just looked like something had chewed it.
Yeah.
So
while we regrouped, we held on to that one. And then I said, look, this one's not going to hold through the night. I'll take us to another one. So,
but we got the boat hook got stuck on it, didn't it?
Oh god.
Oh, and because it was all twisted around because it was like shitty line, and so that must have taken 15 minutes to get that. And and the boat's rocking because it's not
It's a bit rolly. But
anyway, so we're on.
That was our night. How was yours?
So we've now set the anchor app, the anchor
alarm.
Anchor alarm app. So if we drift any more than 10 meters away from
where we are,
it'll wake us up. But what we're going to do is we're going to take it in watches because we just don't want to go through that again.
No, that was
I never ever want to hear that ever.
That sound is horrendous.
Ever again. And I was just screaming, God, help us, as I'm running around trying to get clothes on.
I didn't know she was that religious.
Oh my God, I was going, gotta help us, you gotta help us, and we're running around and doing what we knew we had to do anyway, so obviously we didn't have cameras, we can't show you the real thing.
No time for grabbing anything.
But, you're the first to know, anyway. So we may regroup and we may give you a little aftermath. In the morning, Barry is going to go and
I'll
check
dive
the damage on the hull
tomorrow. Yeah, see what it's like.
when it's light.
Yeah.
And then we'll see where we go from there.
Yeah. I've got to get some sleep though.
Okay, you sleep, I'll stay awake.
Okay.
All right, see you soon. Thank God everything's okay.